What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Weekend coming in strong. We've got kind of a short live here for you because I want to talk about something a bunch of people sent me, and I saw some people talking about on Twitter, and that's the 48 hours um, Idaho 4 Brian Kohberger episode that they posted on YouTube. So much we've already seen about this case and covered about this case. It's been a little while, but I wanted to just see. And people saying nothing new. Well, obviously nothing new because this is, I think, a week old. So the video is not new, but there are definitely comments here made by the victim's family that I think connect some dots, at least to what they think. And I think, again, enhance and shine a light on the issues they're having with law enforcement and the prosecutors and where they're at odds and how that could potentially affect the case, especially if they become witnesses in the case. If there are any plea deal offers, which I don't expect, I think the witness or the victims are going to be very vocal about it. I thought there was a lot of nice sentiment in this um, episode. I don't know what we're calling it, documentary. I don't think it's a documentary, um, but there was a lot of that in there. Also, a lot of, we know he did this, it was Brian Kohberger. This is how he did it. But then they did leave room for a presumption of innocence, potentially somebody else. This has to be proven in court. And a lot of interesting comments when it comes to even what the victims think about that. And right off the jump, they talk about how the victims know more than some of us do because they talked to some investigators early on and they got some information. They talked to the coroner, which we already know about, and they started their investigation from the jump. So I thought that was very interesting as well. So don't forget to hit that like button if you guys are enjoying the content we put out on the channel, because I really like to know what you're most interested in. And it's been a little while since we've talked about this case, so I figured it would be worth it to discuss some of these comments by the victims and see how it could affect the case. And what's really interesting, right, is they are going and doing interviews with 48 hours. And we know that there is currently a gag order on the case. And we know that the judge is currently considering removing cameras from the courtroom. So this has some interesting effect there, because even if the judge removes cameras from the courtroom, it's not going to stop things like this from happening. And even the judge's gag order does not stop the victim's family from discussing how they feel about the case. Now, what's interesting is they say some stuff in here that I know a lot of you have already seen, since you messaged me with quotes about, what exactly Brian Kohberger did or did not bring with him to do this deed that he is accused of, if he did in fact do it. But to me, I'll just say it is negative publicity for Brian Kohberger overall, right? I think we can all agree with that. And if I'm the judge and I'm looking at this case and I'm seeing this episode come out last week, while I'm thinking about making my ruling on whether or not to have cameras in the courtroom, whether or not we need to change venue eventually, whether or not the media scrutiny is going to affect a fair trial in this case, I do think potentially episodes and shows like this could come into play. Now, throughout the episode, they do regurgitate, and I don't mean anything negative by saying they regurgitate. I don't know if 48 Hours has done another episode on it, but it doesn't bother me, obviously, that they're adding context to what's happening in court from some of the court filings and documents that we already know about that have happened in this case. And they give a lot of context. I thought they actually did a pretty good juxtaposition of having somebody say, oh, there's a lot of evidence against Brian Kohberger, his cell phone, how he turned his cell phone off, how they have his car here and there and where it went and when it got back to Washington State. But then they also had somebody on the other side say just that little bit of microscopic DNA is going to be very difficult to prove the case. There are holes. It's not a slam dunk. So I did appreciate that from 48 Hours, that they did keep it pretty level-handed about how there are arguments on both sides of this case. And it's interesting because when you've seen some other episodes, they say, oh, no, there's just way too much evidence. Sometimes there's right. Sometimes there is way too much evidence. But sometimes there are some holes. And in this case, at the very least, I don't think the holes have to be overblown, since we know as the general public that we don't know everything. We don't really know much of anything because the gag order has been in place, because so much has been done under seal. So much has been confidential. And we have already heard from the Gonsalves family how they think transparency is key. They think the general public has helped them They think it's helped them gather information, and they basically do not trust law enforcement, and they do not trust the state attorney's office at this point, especially because they don't feel like they are involving them enough. One of the really interesting parts about this was I felt like it was the most we heard from Xana's family as well. The dad was leaving from dad's weekend, hanging out with Xana, and the Gonsalves family mentioned, especially Kaylee's sister, how she started investigating immediately as far as social media goes, and how they believe that it was a legitimate account made by Brian Kohberger, liking the pictures and following the pages of multiple victims. They also mentioned, did I put this clip in there? I've got a couple clips I'm going to play of it, but I don't think I have a clip on this. But they also, spill the beans about the coroner and how they believe who the targets were, that it was Kaylee and Maddie, and how Xana and Ethan were potentially collateral damage, and how he started on the third floor and worked his way down, and he didn't expect to see the girls in the same room, and this knife was to cut through all sorts of things, not just a normal knife. Not so sure how a coroner could necessarily know all of that exactly. It seems like there may be some stretches there, but they did talk a lot about that. They believe it was planned. Welcome to all the new members, by the way. It was planned. He had a kill kit. I'm not sure what was in that kill kit. But obviously a knife sheath and a knife. We know that that's involved, obviously, but we don't know what else. But I think what's interesting about this, and is that going to come into evidence? Not unless they have evidence that he actually had a kill kit. Just somebody surmising or thinking that based off other things that they have, it's very unlikely that something like that comes in. Now, I think some of the stuff we can read into what the victims' families are saying are some of the holes in the case. And I think that when they talk about a kill kit and they talk about how, this was so planned and he got in and out and how is it possible, is answering some of the questions and some of the holes. Because people are wondering, how is there, no other DNA but on the sheath? How is there no DNA in the car? How did one person do this in this amount of time, right? And some of those questions I feel like have been answered with some of the other evidence. Cleaning materials, gloves, what was he doing with his car? It took this many days for them to actually test his car. So it was possible he cleaned any remnants out. Sure. But I think the family is having some of the same questions that you are in the general public. Yeah, a kill kit is usually more than just the weapon, I would say. Usually, so like burglary tools are like, rope, something to, crack a lock or break into the house, a mask, gloves, things that would protect your identity and keep your DNA from going on there. That's what I think of as a kit, right? Maybe he comes in wrapped in plastic from head to toe. That's what I would think of more as a kit. Yes, this already aired. Okay. Then I think based on some of the comments that we've already heard, this is not a surprise, but they do mention specifically their feelings about the trial, and the victim's family shared whether or not they were cool with continuing this trial. Now, we know Brian Kohberger waived his right to speedy trial, and the victims only have so much say when it comes to that, especially when the prosecutors also wanted to continue the case. But again, it seems like the prosecutors wanted to continue the case over the victim's objection, which the victims can't control that. But their opinion and what they want is supposed to be part of the process. However, it seems like they do understand that they want this trial to be done right, and they want to get a just conviction if he in fact did this, and they don't want to rush it either. But that's not to say they weren't bummed that the case did not go to trial at that time. So do we think that's why Dylan, the roommate who ran into him, wasn't hurt because he had already changed his clothes? Again, these are questions that we don't necessarily have the answers to, which is okay. You don't have to answer every question, but you do have to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And this is one of the questions. How did it end up like this? Right? I think that's a very legitimate question. Laura, do you think it's possible for the scene to be that bloody and none on him, his car, apartment, office? I mean, I do think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. I think if it was how it was described, and they describe it in this 48-hour special, I think the only way to explain away and to make a jury believe that that's possible is that he cleaned his car. And he got rid of his clothes, and he got rid of the weapon and things like that. I think that's more plausible than he was able to do all this and not get a drop anywhere else. Paige, I heard they're trying to get Amazon to confirm that BK ordered the K-bar knife. True. I don't know. I've heard a lot of speculation about this and gotten a lot of messages, but I got to be honest, I haven't seen this confirmed anywhere. So this is where I think the gag order goose chases start. So we got to be careful about what we believe and don't. K-Rab, the episode is available for viewing on YouTube. Yes, it is. Rachel Mills. Yeah, that's where I'm pulling it from, where you guys can watch it on this same YouTube. You can see it when I put it up here. Rachel Mills, can you cover the press conference that the police will hold at noon for the arrest of the person connected with Tupac? So that's so wild. At noon, what time? Because I did want to see it. I mean, absolutely. This is one case that even if there's not a lot of interest in, I still might cover because this is so near and dear to my heart. If they catch who did this to Tupac, that would be one of the wildest developments of all time, literally. Send me the link if you have it, Rachel or anybody else. I would love to check it out. I'm probably not going to be able to go live at the time, but definitely something we'll discuss in the future. All right. They were asked, which I thought was really interesting and a good question. And I enjoyed listening to their answers because it's just whenever you can understand how they're thinking and feeling about this case. And, we've talked about putting ourselves in shoes of people and making difficult decisions and something that you could never imagine going through in your life. That's what's happening here. And we're getting to see how they're dealing with it. And to me, some very honest answers here from the parents about whether or not they think Brian Kohberger actually did this. Nirvana wants to talk about Tupac too, but here for this. Yeah, I'm definitely going to talk about Tupac. If there's any way I can add value to any conversation with that, I'm in. Karen, I can't imagine how hard it must be as a family to having different views and still stay united and strong. Bless these families. Yeah, I mean, somewhat different. I don't think Kaylee's dad is saying that he doesn't think Brian Kohberger did it. I just think he thinks it's possible with somebody else. Maybe that means he has some reasonable doubt, I guess. If he was a juror, potentially, I don't know. But her mom does not at all. Lady Law, wouldn't you agree, Peter, that trust has been eroded due to the gag order and the lack of transparency concerning the case? So there are gag orders where I don't think the trust has to be gone or eroded or even worse between the victim's family and the state attorney's office. I do think that sometimes law enforcement and state attorneys take it very personally if a victim questions their investigative techniques or how good of a job they're doing, which we know happened in this case. And sometimes that can create a rift. If they file a notice of claim to keep that option open, that they may file a claim in the future because of screw ups done, sometimes that can change the way people look at these things. So to me, I think there could be a lot of reasons for the issues. Mercy Cat, 3 of the victims' parents have drug charges history. Steve's brother's in prison for do you think these factors convey reasonable doubt? Can the defense bring these up in front of the jury? So I don't really want to discuss this stuff because I have no idea if this stuff is true. Not to say that you would say it if it wasn't, but I haven't read a lot of what you're saying. I've seen it connected to one of the victims only personally. So I don't know that anybody has connected any of that stuff to this case. Karen, Peter, are civil cases like Maya's always so annoyingly discombobulated with stumbling attorneys? Watching it seems like no one is ready. Absolutely not. I would say they are not always like this, but sometimes they are. That can be document intensive. There can be a lot of different angles that are taken and discussed. So every case is very different. Civil cases, I think, are having some difficulties with presenting exhibits and things like that. But generally, I would say no to that. All right. Oh, people are saying YouTube blocked me. All right. I guess we will close it out then with our outro. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.